Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you to today's lesson, and our topic for today is learning. I'll quickly share my screen so you can follow. Right. So we would want to look at learning and be able to explain that, be able to also explain the parts of the human memory and discuss the theories of forgetting, as well as improve retention. Now, learning is a permanent change in behavior as a result of experience. From time to time, we experience certain things. We experience things that has to do with ourselves and then even learn from the experience of others. So at every point in time, when there's a permanent change in your behavior due to the experiences that you have, that is when you can say that you have learned. Right now, anytime you're looking for a new result, you want to see something new, there's a need for you to be able to change your mindset, change how you used to do things. And that's when you can say that you have actually learned. Great. So what are the characteristics of learning? Learning has a purpose. Learning also comes through experience. Again, learning is multifaceted. It has different dimensions. Then learning is an active process. So at every point in time, you, the learner, participates actively. That is one of the characteristics. So in learning, we talk about you have to be able to learn, unlearn, and relearn. At every point in time, there are certain things that you know, okay, that you have discovered, and all those things come under learning. But from time to time, you find out that new ideas, new theories, new ways of doing things come up, and there's a need for you to unlearn. So the past things that you knew how to do certain things in a particular way. But as time goes on, as you go through education and as you experience life for yourself, you notice that you need to unlearn certain things. Unlearning is just like having a bag and then you've packed stuff into the bag. From time to time, if you have to travel somewhere else, you may have to unpack, you may have to remove the thing from the bag and put new things in it. It's the same way. So you learn things as you grow, as you go through life, you unlearn and then you relearn. You learn new things in place of what you knew before. So that is where we see that you are learning, and then your ability to learn and unlearn and relearn is what makes you illiterate. There's a saying that the illiterates of the 21st century are not those who are unable to read and write, but those who are unable to learn, unlearn, and relearn. So there's always a need for us to learn new things to replace the old things that we know. And that is the point where you want to get to. Again, there are different types of learners. You have the visual learners, auditory learners, read and write learners, and kinesthetic learners. Now, visual learners are those who have to see with they learn with pictures, they learn with graphs. Auditory learners want to hear what you're saying. Read and write would want to repeat what they've read by writing it down and rewriting it. So kinesthetic learners, as the name suggests, are those who want to use their limbs. So they use their hands, they want to practice what you have taught them. These are the types of learners. I believe each of them has its own sides, pros and cons. And one person can be more than, can be a learner, a visual learner, and also an auditory learner. Another can be a read and write and auditory. So you can have just more than one of them being what you are as a learner. And you need to know this for you to be able to know how to learn. So you know that if you're a visual learner, then at every point in time, whatever you are learning, you need to, for example, in your studies in school, you need to be able to use pictorial images to help you to learn. So understand who you are as a learner and be able to learn as such. Okay, that's how you get success in your studies. Yeah. Good. So we've spoken about the types. Now we want to look at the levels of learning. Now, according to the Bloom's taxonomy, learning is like a pyramid. Okay, you have the knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and then evaluation. Now, each of these steps has what it entails, right? And therefore, you need to be able to know that at every point in time, where are you in your learning? Okay, are you just at the knowledge level or the comprehension level, or you've gotten to the point where you're able to apply what you've learned, or are you at the point where you are able to identify patterns, organizational thought. Are you able to know or recognize trends and organize ideas? What at that level is where we call the analysis. And then you have the synthesis, where you are able to use old concepts to create new ones. Then you move from there to the evaluation, where you assess theories, you're able to compare ideas and all of that. Now, Bloom's taxonomy was propounded by Bloom et al. In 1956, but just in 2001, Anderson and Krathwohl also revised Bloom's taxonomy, and they use verbs instead of the nouns that Bloom used earlier. So they said remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and then the last one is creating. At every stage, you know that you're doing something different that is higher than the previous one. So at the remembering stage, you are able to just define, list, memorize, all those come under remembering. Then you get to the understanding, where you're able to describe, discuss, explain. So you get to the next level, applying. Now you are able to illustrate, interpret. What does this thing mean? That is where you say that you're able to apply. You solve problems. Analysis is where you should be able to compare, contrast, criticize, differentiate between two things. That is the analysis level. Then the evaluation has to do with you being able to appraise, argue, defend. Though all those things come under evaluating. Now, at the creating stage, you are saying that you should be able to assemble, construct, create, design, and all that. Okay, so that this is the revised version of the Bloom's taxonomy. All right, wonderful. So we come quickly to look at the human memory. Now, the memory of every individual, every human being is divided into three, regardless of the size of your head. I always say that. I mean, you still have three parts in your memory. Now, the first part is the sensory memory. Then you have the working memory and the long-term memory. From the diagram, you see that information first enters the sensory memory, and therefore all those things that enter your sensory memory are called the sensory inputs. What you hear, what you see, what you feel, what you smell, everything enters the sensory memory first. So all those information there, I mean, in a day you see 1,000 things, you hear 1,000 things, and they all enter the sensory memory. If nothing is done about those information, within seconds you lose the information in the sensory memory. If you pay attention to that information, it moves to the working memory. And then with time, it moves to the long-term memory. Now, before it gets to the long-term memory, it is encoded. And anytime you need the information from the long-term memory, it will just be retrieved from the long-term memory back to the working memory. So at every point in time, there's a need for you to be actively involved, because the working memory is where you are, I mean, your reasoning, as where you are now, your state now. If you see somebody, for example, in the morning and you don't pay attention to what the person was wearing, later in the day, if you are, I mean, you don't even remember. If you're asked even about what the person was wearing, you don't, because the memory, the sensory memory cannot hold information for a long time, but the working memory can. And for a very long time, if it's not, I mean, if the information is not used regularly, it's encoded and sent into the long-term memory. A typical example can be the name of your basic one teacher, and the name of some friend, I mean the name of a friend that you used to be in school with some time ago. Sometimes when you try to probe, you see that the information is there, but it's hidden in the long-term memory. You don't usually use it. It's hidden there. Anytime you want it to come back, it's likely to be able to come back. Now, at every point in time, the experiences you've gone through, whatever you've learned in life, most of them are hidden in a long-term memory. You may think that it's gone, but it's there. When you try to retrieve, you'll be able to retrieve. Great. And it's at that point that you say that you have been able to learn, because when the information is in the long term memory, it means that it will not be lost over a short period. You will keep it there for a very long time. So that is where you can see that it has become part of you. Just like you can walk, you know how to walk, you learned how to walk when you were very young, but you still can walk because your long-term memory still has that information. And at every point in time, this is what it means to say that you have actually learned. Good. So these are more information about the parts of the memory. Okay, so we can move on to the next slide. Good. So we want to look at the theories of forgetting. Now, there are several reasons why you forget. I also forget. There are several reasons. And one of the first theories that back forgetting or can explain forgetting is the decay theory. The decay theory suggests that a person forgets those things that are not used. So if you know something, if you are aware of something and you do not use it over time, the decay theory suggests that you forget. Example of such is all the things you learned in, say, mathematics. If you are not doing math now, the likelihood of you forgetting the formula for pi r square, I mean, when we say area of a circle, area, radius of a circle, circumference of a circle, all those things, you don't even care anymore because you don't use them and therefore you've forgotten. So at every point in time, you know that this formula exists, but you don't remember clearly what it is. And I mean, you are not able to even use it for anything. So that is the decay theory. Interference theory says that you forget certain experiences because new ones have overshadowed them. So sometimes you had a very bad experience during the childhood, but as you have grown now, maybe you are having a very good life. And because of that, you can hardly remember the things you suffered when you were young. Okay, so that means that the new experience has overshadowed the old one. It's the same for the other side. If you had a good experience growing up and then maybe now you're struggling, then it means that this new experience will overshadow it. And that's the interference theory. And it applies to a lot of areas in our lives. Now you have the motivated forgetting, where you deliberately have a desire or motive to forget. It's intentional. So you want to forget. There are two types. You have the repression and the suppression. So at every point in time, you are deliberate and conscious about the fact that you want to forget this. There are certain experiences that you wouldn't want to remember. Some have to do with abuse, some have to do with any kind of thing that you would want to get rid of, you would want to avoid. So you intentionally take your mind off it as though you don't remember. That is the motivated forgetting. And these are the three theories that we want to look at for the sake of time. Yeah. Good. So how do you improve retention of learning if employees have been taught? Because all these things that we are talking about the memory and all of that, is for us to be able to know and apply them to our trainings. Because you know that if a trainer, if a trainee is able to store the things that you've taught them in their long-term memory, it's going to last. Okay. But how do you ensure that they are able to retain this? The first thing is praising employees. When you praise people, it stimulates learning. When people do the right thing, you're able to talk about it, compliment them. It helps them to be able to learn more. Okay, oh, you've done well, and all that. These things are supposed to come often to help employees or trainees to learn. Now, recall is promoted by association. Anytime you are teaching or training employees, try to associate what you are saying, the abstract things you are teaching them, with real life situations. When you associate it that way, they are able to understand easily. So you are talking about you're teaching somebody about SOHCAHTOA in mathematics, okay, sin, cos, tan. But if you use an example of the ladder, okay, how the ladder leans on a wall, that is a typical example of association. So you are telling the person, and the person has seen a ladder leaning on the wall before. So it's easier for them to understand the SOHCAHTOA. One of the just saying the abstract sin, cos, tan, somebody will take a year to understand that. So as association, when you are training, always associate what you're training the person on with real life situations. Now, favorable attitudes aid retention. When you are training people and you have a favorable attitude, you don't scream, you don't shout, you don't beat them up just because you want them to learn something, but you are actually having a positive attitude. It helps them to learn. Learning with all your senses is most effective. Now, you don't just learn in one part of your body. You learn every senses, all the senses that you have. and it helps you to retain. Meaningful repetition aids recall. Sometimes we deliberately repeat certain things for you to be able to recall them. So at every point in time, if you want people to retain learning, try to repeat most of the time. Don't just teach something once and forget about it forever. Try to bring it up once in a while, and they'll be able to recall it. All right, thank you so much. These are the references, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.